Hello and welcome to my YouTube channel. I'm Luna, a creative soul passionate about fashion, art, sewing, history, and everything beautiful that surrounds me. I have a BA in Design and Technology, and I would like to take you in my journey of sewing our own clothes and sharing my knowledge with you. Today, I would like to show you how to make this beautiful dress. Her name is Umbriel, named after one of the Uranus moons, and it is the first in the many moons to come through my patterns. I have created, constructed and designed this pattern myself. It is a very versatile pattern with 4 options available, 2 different dresses and 2 different tops, and you can get creative and do a lot more. The size range is from 32 to 52 EU and from 0 to 20 US. The pattern comes with written instructions as well and other helpful materials. More information you will find in the description below alongside with the pattern available for purchase. Now let's make the Umbriel dress together. After you have downloaded the digital pattern, open the PDF file using Adobe Acrobat Reader. It is free to download. You need to have this program in order to be able to select only your size for printing. Once you have opened the PDF, click on the tab Layers. In here, you will find all the sizes selected. Each size comes with 2 layers, one for the actual size and one for the seam allowance, which is 1 cm. I recommend you to print the size with the seam allowance. Uncheck all the sizes except for the one that you wish to print and the text layer. Do not uncheck the text layer because this layer contains the information and guidelines for assembling the pattern. After you select your layers, click Print. In this menu, select your printer. After that, in the Page Sizing and Handling section, select Custom Size 100%. It is important to select it in order for the pattern to be printed correctly. Now you are good to go. Click Print and your pattern is on your way. Here are the printed pages with the Umbriel pattern. On the pattern you will find a chart with the correspondent lines for each size, a test square to check if the pattern is printed on full size, and also cutting instructions for each pattern piece. I have here the front part as an example in order to show you how to assemble the pattern. As you can see, the pages are numbered and each intersection of pages has a half circle with a number and a letter on it. Start by cutting or folding the pages at the bottom and at one side. After you cut the pages, start to patch them with the guidance of the circles and then tape them. You have all the information regarding the placement and cutting instructions for each pattern piece written on them, and you can also find a detailed guide on the PDF file with the written instructions for the Umbriel pattern. Finally, cut each pattern piece carefully, and after that your pattern is ready to be used. For the dress, you will have a total of 5 pattern pieces. The front part placed on the fold of the fabric. The back part, you are going to have 2 pieces from the fabric. The front part of the skirt placed on the fold of the fabric. The back part of the skirt, you are going to have 2 pieces from the fabric. And the sleeve, also 2 pieces from the fabric. You have all the information regarding the placement and cutting instructions for each pattern piece written on them, and you can also find a detailed guide on the PDF file with the written instructions for the Umbriel pattern. Here I have the necessary things for making the Umbriel dress. This is the main fabric. I chose a thick cotton, but you are welcome to use another type of fabric because this pattern can be made out of a variety of fabrics. Just make sure to interface if it is necessary. A long invisible zipper, lining, tools, elastic, and of course the pattern, which you will find linked in the description below. Now let's start. I have here the fabric folded in half, and on it I'm going to place strategically the pattern pieces so the print will be aligned. When placing the pattern pieces on the fabric, it is really important to place a straight grain of each piece parallel to the edge of the fabric. Before you start cutting out your pattern, I would like to mention that it is important to mark all the notches and darts. You can do both, mark them with chalk and also make small incisions. In this way, you are sure that everything will go smooth when you are stitching. I have placed my pattern on the fabric and I will start to pin it in place and cut carefully each piece. Let's move on to the darts. Here is how I do them. Take the back bodice piece with the wrong side of the fabric placed up. On it, place the pattern and pin it. Start to cut off the dart legs only from the paper pattern. One side and then the other side. After you cut the dart legs, fold the paper up and away from the fabric, forming a gap. On that gap, start to draw with a tailor pen or a piece of chalk the dart legs and upper edge on the fabric. You can also draw the middle of the dart if you consider it helpful. Do the same for all the darts on both the back piece and the front piece for both the main fabric and the lining. After you drew all the darts, you can start to stitch them, or you can use this trick to help you stitch them easier, and that is to press them first. Fold the dart in half and press for a few seconds just to help the fabric stay in place. Here is how I'm stitching the darts. Start stitching by using a medium stitch length, and when you are approximately 2 cm away from the top of the dart, change the stitch length to the smallest your machine has. Stitch until the end, but do not backstitch. Leave a longer thread and make a knot at the end to secure the dart. This method helps your dart to lay better. Do the same for all the darts for both the main fabric and the lining. After you finish stitching all the darts, press them towards the center. Do this for the front piece and the back pieces. Press them carefully, firstly on the wrong side of the fabric and then on the right side of the fabric. Repeat these steps for the lining as well. Time to assemble the bodice. Before you start to assemble the bodice, you can overlock or zigzag stitch the bottom, sides and shoulders of the front and back pieces. Do not overlock at the neckline and armhole. Time to assemble the bodice. Place the front piece with right side up. On it, place the back pieces with right side down. Right sides facing each other. Pin them together in place. After you pin the side seams, pin the shoulder seams as well. Stitch the shoulder seams and the side seams with 1 cm of seam allowance. Repeat the same steps for the lining. Next, we are going to attach the skirt. Place the front piece and the back pieces on top of each other with right sides together. Start to pin the sides together. Do the same for the lining. Now, stitch them with 1 cm of seam allowance. After your seams are ready, press them really well on both the wrong and the good side of the fabric for both the main fabric and the lining. The next step is to attach the bodice to the skirt. Unfold the bodice and the skirt and place the bodice on top of the skirt with right sides facing each other. Start by matching the side seams of the bodice and the skirt. It is important to match them together well, because in this way your dress will have aligned side seams. Pin them together, and after that work your way to the center front by matching and pinning the parts together. Now match and pin the back part of the bodice to the back part of the skirt. At the edges, in order for the back seam of the dress to be perfectly aligned, you need to place a small corner of the back bodice outside and on top of the skirt, like I'm showing you here. Next, assemble the lining by repeating the same steps. Stitch them together with 1 cm of seam allowance. Before pressing the seam, make small cuts into the seam along the curvier parts. In this way, you will help the fabric lay better. Press on both the wrong and the good side of the fabric. Next step is the hem. Mark the hem width from the pattern, or feel free to choose a different width and start to fold it. Pin it in place or press it. After you secure the hem in place, stitch it carefully. After you stitch the hem, press it once more. Repeat the same steps for the lining, or you can choose just to overlock or zigzag stitch the lining, but in this case, remember that you have to cut off an extra 2 cm from the lining bottom. Now let's make the back seam. Place the skirt parts with right sides facing each other and stitch from the bottom until the zipper mark. Time to install the invisible zipper. This is the method that I use, but if you feel more comfortable doing it in another way, please do so. Place the dress on the table with right side up and on it the zipper with right side down. Place the left part of the zipper on the right part of the dress. Leave 1 cm of the zipper tape outside. Depending on the zipper format, it can be different. Pin the rest of the zipper to the back part of the dress. Start to stitch the zipper with a normal sewing foot until the back seam. This is my way of doing it without basting. After you stitch one side, it's time to stitch the other one. Turn the dress inside out. Pin the zipper tail to the back seam 2 cm below the point where the back seam starts. Next, mark the waistline on the zipper tape and start to pin the zipper to the back of the dress with right sides together and paying attention to match the waist. Stitch it until you reach the back seam. Next, turn the dress with right side out. Open the zipper and insert the zipper slider between those 2 cm gap we left earlier, between the back seam and the pin. After that, put on an invisible zipper foot and start to stitch carefully until you reach the back seam. Do the same for the both sides of the zipper. Now, release the zipper slider through the hole and close the zipper. Check if everything is okay. Hand stitch the zipper tail on the back seam allowance to secure it in place. Press the zipper. Time to attach the lining to the main fabric. Open the dress and place it with right side up. On it, place the lining open with right side down. Start to match and pin the lining to the main fabric, working your way from one part to another. Stitch them carefully with 1 cm of seam allowance. Before you press the seam, again make small cuts along the curvier parts. Then press it on the good side and the wrong side of the fabric. The next step is to make the understitch. This will help the lining to lay better, stay inside and not roll outside. Get the lining out, place it open, parallel with the main fabric. Turn the seam allowance under the lining. Start to stitch on the good side of the lining 2 mm from the edge, making sure to place the seam allowance under the lining while stitching. Take your time and do it slowly. After you finish, press the top again. Now let's attach the lining to the zipper tape. Open the zipper and turn the dress inside out. Grab the lining along with the zipper tape and flip it over. After you flipped it, you can pin it in place and start to stitch it by using a zipper foot or positioning your needle close to the edge. Cut the corners and press the seam. Turn the dress and make the corners as sharp as possible. Stitch the lining to the main fabric at the waistline. Moving on to the sleeves. I chose to make here a long sleeve like it is on the digital pattern, but you can easily adjust it on the length that you desire. First, fold the hem of the sleeve, which will form a channel through where the elastic will be inserted. You can pin it or press it. Next, stitch the hem with 0.5 seam allowance. I chose to fold the hem at the width marked on the digital pattern, but depending on the width of the elastic that you are going to use, add 1 cm extra to the hem so the elastic will easily go through. Make the gathering stitch between the marks on the pattern using the longest stitch length on your sewing machine. Backstitch at the beginning but not at the end, leaving the thread longer so you can pull the thread to adjust to the armhole. Using a safety pin, insert the elastic through the channel prior made. Secure the elastic with pins at both ends. Once the elastic is inserted and secured, stitch the seam of the sleeve with 1 cm of seam allowance. Next, press the seam of the sleeve really well. Now the last step is to attach the sleeve to the top. Turn the top inside out and insert the sleeve through the armhole with right sides facing each other. First, match the side seam of the top with the seam of the sleeve, and after that start to match and pin the rest of the sleeve to the armhole, adjusting the gathering in order for the sleeve to match the armhole. After you secure it, stitch them together and repeat the steps for the other sleeve. Gently press the sleeve, but avoid the gathered part. You can overlock or zigzag stitch the seam. And here it is, your finished Umbriel dress. Thank you very much for watching until now, and if you consider purchasing my pattern, I would like you to know that I appreciate it and I thank you very much for supporting my small business. It means the world to me. Have a magical day. Until next time. With love, Luna.